Okay, everyone see that? You can see that one, Will?
Yep.
Okay, cool. So here we are with today's lesson, which will be hosted by Will, and we are looking at the most important part of running your website, and that is speed. And Will be showing us a lot of tips on how to speed up your website in WordPress, and obviously using Elementor for this. I just have to see. I'm going to scroll through these. Okay, so that was the first page, wasn't it? Sorry, I'm kind of doing that thing where this happens every time. Here we go. Okay, so agenda. I press my mouse a tiny little bit, it moves like 5 pages. So yes, same as usual today, 6 p.m. starting. We'll start with a quick welcome and introductions to the team. Then we'll take a look at what is new. You would have seen Elementor has been updated in the last couple of days. So we'll quickly run through that. Today's topic, so pass back over to Will for that one. Any questions at all, and there'll probably be a lot because he's covering a lot here. We'll have a Q&A at the end, and we're aiming for a 7 p.m. finish so we can all eat our dinner. Let's see if I can do this lightly. No, wrong, mate. Okay, so quick introduction to the team. Will, we'll start with you.
Hey everyone, I'm Will Brown. So I'm one of the meetup organizers for the Elementor Australia meetup. I'm also the meetup organizer for the WordPress Sydney meetup. And I'm also Vice President of Linux Australia, which is the premier open source body for everything open source in Australia. I've been working with WordPress since 2008, Elementor probably a good 3-4 years now, I think. Mostly a developer, but I tend to do a lot of consultancy as well, which is basically telling people how to use WordPress and how to use systems and connect all the things together. So it's been great to see the numbers grow in the Elementor meetup group. So thanks very much for supporting us and coming along in person tonight.
Thank you, Will. And obviously we still have Julia on the team here, but she's not with us today. So I'll talk about myself. I am John, and I am a graphic designer, and I've been using Elementor for around 5 years now. And I've actually got to the point now where I kind of refuse to use anything else. All of my clients come in, and I just had a new client come in, and he showed me his website, and it was just an absolute mess. And I'm like, I'm just going to build it again. I'm not going to try and fix what you already have. I'm just going to build it again. And I did the whole thing in 3 days, which he was very happy with because I didn't have a very big budget. But yes, so that's me. So I'm all about design, and I run my own design agency and build a lot of websites, and I use Elementor for all of them now. So yes, that was me. What's next on the list? Wrong way again. Okay, so quickly, code of conduct. Will, if you're able to just post that link into the chat window there. So we have a large code of conduct, and as we always say on this one, TLDR, too long, didn't read. But the 3 main things to remember in this is respect, transparency, and community. But yes, if you need to read the code of conduct, that link will be up there for you now. And so, yes, that was me and Will introducing ourselves. We would like you guys to introduce yourselves as well, and just give us a very quick, brief introduction of who you are and why you are here. So you can either raise your hand the old-fashioned way, or press the little raise hand button in the bottom of Zoom there. Tell us a little bit about yourself, and as always on this one, trying to keep this in, we want to know what you're drinking right now. And every time I'm always here with the same thing, my mug of herbal tea, and today it is lemon and ginger. So anyone like to oh, sorry, is that Stefan? Is that a thumbs up from Stefan?
It is, yeah.
I can't see the whole can't see the whole list there. Stefan, over to you, please. And
Hi. Just setting up a video. I'm not sure if it's working, but yeah. Yeah, I assume it's working.
Yep, we can hear you.
Yeah, sweet. Yeah, I was actually giving a thumbs up to the tea, but yeah, I'm not a ginger fan, but always for tea. But yeah, I'm basically a web designer / developer, and also cloud engineer. Yeah, but I do freelance web design on WordPress since 2018. Yeah, just using a lot of Elementor. Ever since using WordPress for 1 year on WP Bakery, I just switched to Elementor and didn't look back. Yeah, recently I've been trying to find ways to like host a static version of the WordPress site on Elementor, but some plugins just, yeah, they don't generate a correct HTML format within CSS. So yeah, and there's also a bit of like pipeline work to figure out like every you make a change, how do you make that a static page again? It works for maybe like static sites, but like static design sites that don't change a lot. But if you have like a dynamic store, yeah, I think you have to go like a Jamstack route or something like that. Yeah, I'm from Sydney, by the way, so yeah, I've been to a few of these meetups and the WordPress one. Yeah. Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks for that, Stefan. Anyone else? I saw a physical hand go up a second ago. Lachlan, sorry, Lachlan.
Yeah.
Lachlan, sorry.
So I'm sort of multidisciplinary designer. I'm very scatty in terms of what I do. Some of it's sort of art direction, some of it's illustration, sometimes it's development. It's just all over the shop, and that's kind of how I like it. So yeah, sometimes I am doing, but just a very quick history. My background is probably, I'm actually an industrial designer by trade, so that's probably why I like having a multidisciplinary approach to a lot of things. I like to just, I'm creating, but I'm also very technical. So if someone's building a website, I kind of, at some point, I want to learn how to do it myself. And yeah, that's for many years I've sort of done as a sideline, and now I sort of, it's probably about 20% of what I do, but it's a good 20%. So yeah, and yeah, I've got a good stead of sort of small of clients that will come to me for web.
Okay, excellent. Yeah,
it's basically the higher value stuff that you can do with Elementor that they're looking for. So yeah,
I like that description of it. Yeah, higher value, because yeah, there's a lot that you can do, and people are even surprised you've used Elementor at times, I think, because it kind of gives you a lot more opportunities than something like WP Bakery or Divi. So yeah, it's cool.
Nice to have you here.
Yeah. Anyone else? Paul? Getting there fast.
I'm talking with the mute on, but there you go. Yeah, so I've been in IT for something like ridiculous, like 40 years or something. Been doing WordPress for about 10 years, Elementor since about 4 or 5 years, you know, about a year after it came out. I've got about 20 sites supporting at the moment. I'm hosting it myself on AWS, which I found to be a great way to do it if you're an ex-sysadmin, you know, and so you can tweak everything from the Unix side all the way through to the, you know, the plugins and everything. Don't have to argue with hosts about, you know, changing a setting or something. You can just go in and do it yourself, which gives you complete control over all the tweaking. Like I've tweaked a lot of the PHP settings recently, you know, spawning off, you know, child processes and things, and that's the sort of level of optimization that most web people don't get down to. So yeah, it's interesting. So I look forward to hearing what you've got to say. But thanks.
Very cool. Okay, anyone else, or should we move on to the next thing? Anyone? One more? Want to put a hand up? Yep. Renee.
Hi everyone. I'm probably the greenest person in the room. I'm currently working for an e-commerce software company in learning operations, but I've just finished a Get into Tech bootcamp where we had to design our own website with Wix. I know that's probably not the right place to say that word here, but I discovered Elementor through all my research of learning how to do things, and I found the blog extremely useful in teaching, you know, best practices and things like that, and joined Meetup, and I saw this come up and I thought, hell, I'm in my discovery process and learning and absorbing, so I thought I'd just quietly come and observe and see what you guys talk about. Maybe I'll learn something new. Half of it will probably go over the top of my head, but I'm just here to observe and absorb information like a sponge, so don't mind me in the corner.
I love it. That's the way I learned all of this. I started with Squarespace and then just watch videos like this, watch everything Elementor have up themselves and learned it that way. So yes, be a sponge. Absorb it all.
Sponge,
I love that
thanks
phrase.
for having me.
No worries. That's going to be the phrase of the night. Be a sponge.
Be a sponge. We're all sponges. Okay, so we'll move on to the next part now. Then thanks for introducing yourselves, guys. So just a quick run through the Elementor updates. I think the free and the pro one both updated on my sites yesterday. So with the free one, the first one on here is the accordion widget. I'm sure you guys all know what an accordion is in a website. When you click on one thing, it drops that down. They had one before. I can't remember what it's called, but it didn't work very well. I think it's called like the toggle or something. No, not that. I can't remember what it's called. But it kind of, when you dropped one down, the next one dropped down and dropped down and dropped down. But the accordion, when it drops down one, the other one will go back up. So that's very cool. And then the next thing that they brought in is the AI for images. And I want to hear more about how you guys have used their AI tool. Yeah, I used it once for a bit of code and it did work perfectly, but I'm kind of scared to use it with things like images and text, to be honest. But yeah, so they can bring in images. So you write in what you want and it will create an image for you or find an image. And they also have the apps page, and the apps page is the same as the plugins page in your backend for WordPress. So just go into Elementor on the left-hand side and choose apps, and it will just show up plugins basically that they are kind of approving, I guess. So all the kind of extra widgets and stuff you can buy from people like Unlimited. If it's in there and Elementor is saying, hey, it's one of our apps, that means they approve it, they like it, it means it's going to work well with everything. So check that out, because you will be looking to do things outside of Elementor that you need these plugins for. So check that one out. And then quickly on the Pro update, taxonomy filter widget. And we've written here, filter listings in loop grids. So I don't know if you've used the loop grids yet, but they are very, very good for kind of designing blog pages that don't just follow the same grid every time, that you can kind of be a bit more creative with it. And they brought in this now that you can just assign it to different categories. So when you have blogs, let's say you have different subcategories of those blogs, you can put that up at the top and then people can kind of choose between them. So yes, check that one out.
I've just been using it this week, both the slider and the grid.
Yeah.
For e-commerce, for WooCommerce. And it's awesome. I just chuck out 10 plugins. Just
excellent. Yeah, that's it. And that's it. We want to do everything that we can do with inside Elementor. And yeah, I mean, that's it. They're just kind of copying what everyone else is doing, but then we put it also inside Elementor.
No, works really brilliantly. You got complete control.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, well, I'm going to have a play around with it this week or next week. Yeah, week's almost done. All right, thanks, mate. Okay, so obviously we have our Elementor Meetup Facebook group. Link is at the bottom there. Join us on that one to keep updated with everything we are doing. And obviously the roadmap. Here is the link for the roadmap. And we talk about this all the time. Just if you want to see what Elementor have got in the process as well, and what will be coming up soon. And oh man, this mouse, I need to get a new mouse. Next month is September the 7th at 6 p.m. And we are looking at one of the fairly new things in Elementor, which is creating mega menus. And I will be hosting this one. And I'll be looking at redesigning one of the websites that I first built about 5 years ago and how we can use the mega menu to improve navigation, because we have about 1,000 blog posts on that website. So we need to improve navigation, and mega menu will help us do that. Try to do it slow. Okay. Over to you, Will.
Okay.
This is Speed Up WordPress and Elementor.
Okay, cool. I'll just share my screen. Boom. There we go. Okay. So let's jump into why speed is important. I think we all know that anyway. But I open up with, how is it not? Speed is the most important thing past, actually communicating what you want to your customers. Speed is pretty much everything. And according to Google, your website should load in 2 seconds or less. Any longer and visitors start to lose interest. Over the last 30, 40 years, humans have now a lower attention span than goldfish, which I believe is something like 5 or 8 seconds. So we just kind of click away and bounce away. So studies have shown that page loading time of more than 2 seconds get pretty much a 50% bounce rate. So people are really don't want to wait at all. So speed is everything at the moment. So it covers things like SEO, page rankings, user experience, conversion rates, bounce rates, everything. So yeah, speed is a big thing. So how do you measure website speeds? Should be speed. I like to use GT metrics. There's quite a few different tools out there, like Google got Lighthouse, there's a few like Pingdom tools, but GT metrics is my favorite. That's the one up on the screen at the moment. It gives you their own grading system as well as the Google Core Web Vitals score, which was brought in about a couple of years ago now. What I would say if you're going to use GT metrics is to register with a free account, because if you just use the anonymous account, it sets your browsing location or testing location in the USA. If you register for a free account, you don't have to pay anything, you don't have to put any credit cards or anything, then you get to change your testing location to Australia. So it's pretty important to be able to attest from, you know, where your website's main audience are. So GT metrics, it gives you like a speed visualization on the page as it loads. It also suggests some top fixes to get the most improvement out for your website speed. So if you don't really know what to do, if you're new to this, completely new, if you stick that your website in there, have a look down the bottom. It actually tells you, which things are going to make the site faster quickly. And then you can, if you don't know how to implement those, there's a little drop down. It tells you a little bit more, and then you can just do a bit of a Google and find out those. So it's a great way, great starter thing. You know, if you don't know where to start improving speed, then you'll run it through GT metrics, have a look at this waterfall, and crack off those top issues from the list, and that should at least get you halfway there, I would think. If you're looking to run a baseline speed test, so if you're completely new to this and you want to figure out why your WordPress website is so slow, these 3 baseline tests are the things that you should perform. So the first one is the WordPress core. So we basically just disable all your themes, disable all your plugins, use a 2020 something. That's one of the themes that comes with WordPress. So 2022, 2023, something like that. That's the first test that you should run. The second one, it should be with your core chosen theme activated, still no plugins. Do another test in GT metrics, have a look at the numbers. The third test should be everything activated, this is your full site, and then test that and get the numbers. So 3 different core tests. So obviously if your WordPress core scores are pretty bad, you may want to evaluate, maybe switching web hosts. But test number 1 will tell you that. So test number 1 with the WordPress core, that's going to give you an idea of what we call TTFB, or time to first byte. So this is your WordPress, it's got no theme, it's got the default theme, and it's got no plugins. This is the fastest that your WordPress website can ever go on that web host. So if it's slow here, then you definitely should consider moving your host to someone else, or at the very least raise a support ticket and get the support engineers to have a look at that, because that is not right. So if you're getting maybe 5 or 6 seconds on your time to first byte on the first test, then that's definitely red flags. You don't need to go any further. You need to get that sorted out. Test number 2, that's going to give you a good idea as to how heavy your theme is. So some themes are really lightweight, and we'll have a look at some a little bit later. Some themes have everything inside, like carousels, testimonials, plugins, all that sort of stuff, and they can be really, really heavy, and they can bring your speed down. So this is why we do the second test with your theme. And if you see a large gap between the first and the second, then you might want to consider looking at theme options and maybe turning some things off, or maybe switching to a different theme that's a little bit more lightweight. Test number 3, that's the full impact of all your plugins enabled. Again, you're looking between the different scores, so have a look from the speed from number 2 and the speed from test number 3, and that's going to show you what these plugins are adding to your speed of your website. And I'd probably do a test, maybe 3 or 4 different pages, not just the home page, 2 or 3 of the more important pages, just to get an idea, because sometimes plugins will act very differently. On the blog archive, that's where it shows all your blog posts. You might have a carousel, loop carousel, or something else on there, which you might not have on your homepage. So try and do this, maybe these 3 tests across 4 or 5 different pages, just to get an average idea as to how theme and how plugins are activating or changing the test speed. I'll try and slow down a little bit so I can actually talk properly. Okay, first of all, I think we'll start with Elementor performance. So these things here are specific to Elementor, and then I'll move on to WordPress general things, or just website general things. Okay, number one, we're in Elementor settings and features here. So this is the settings for Elementor. If you come into this tab, you'll see that there's a stable features section on there. We want to make sure that these three options are turned on. So it's optimized DOM output, improved asset loading, and improved CSS loading. Now, they should be turned on by default if you're new to Elementor. If you've been playing around with Elementor for a good number of years, some of these, for example, the optimized DOM output has just came in, not say recently, but it wasn't there in the first version of Elementor. So probably worthwhile to double check to make sure that is on by default. So we want to make sure that all the stable features here, the improved asset loading and improved CSS loading, that they're all on and set to default. The other one that you can run for Elementor, and again, these are our tests, this one. So now we're in the experiment. So same page, but we go down a little bit. There's two that are linked to performance. One is inline font icons, and the other one is lazy load background images. Now, the inline font icons, what it does is this kind of relates to your Font Awesome. Font Awesome is a big file of lots of different fonts. In there, it can actually be really, really huge, the file it loads in. If you need to use that, then you can consider coming into the experiments and turning this on. It's in a beta just now, so it's not too bad. It's fairly stable. And what this does is it converts all the Font Awesome fonts into an SVG file, and then it adds it into the HTML page. What it's doing is the SVG files are really, really small. They're just numbers. Whereas the fonts are not. So it can make it a little bit smaller, and it could improve performance if you're really using Font Awesome quite heavily on your website. So give that a go. These are experiments, so bear that in mind. It could make it worse. It could do other things. So, take it with a pinch of salt.
Quick question.
Yeah.
So if you are loading custom fonts, and do you need to, is that so important, the inline font icons?
No. So if you're loading your own fonts, you probably wouldn't have this off.
Okay, great.
Yeah. The next one, lazy loading background images. And again, this is up to yourself. You'll know your own designs. If you use background images in your containers and things, then you might want to come in here and turn that experiment on. It's in alpha, which means it could be a bit flaky. But what this does is it tries to load the background images on your containers as you scroll. So, if you've got a lot of background, a lot of containers, a crypto landing page, for example, you might be able to improve performance by activating this so that it's not loading those assets in as the web browser loads the page. It's only when the user scrolls, it starts to load the ones kind of above and below what you can see on the screen. So those are kind of performance-related Elementor settings that you might want to try and do a little bit of testing and see if that improves your performance overall. CSS, so whenever you're creating a page with Elementor, it creates CSS for all the widgets and settings that you've got on that particular page. There's a couple of ways that it can handle that. One is internal embedding, where it actually adds all the CSS into the HTML page. And the other one is an external file where it writes off to the wp-content/upload/Elementor/CSS folder. In most cases, I would recommend that you have external file on. So you want Elementor to create an external file, mainly because that only gets loaded once by one visitor, and it should be cached by whatever systems are in place. That could be your caching plugin, it could be Cloudflare, it could be your hosting companies hosting. But so for my instances, I generally recommend that keep that to an external file. It should be there by default, I think. We'll just double check that. The next one is to disable default fonts and icons. So Elementor comes with Font Awesome. It also comes with a whole pack of icons as well that all get loaded automatically. If you're not using those, then you should certainly come to the settings, the advanced feature, and turn those off for those. So there's a Google font, you want to disable that, and then there's load Font Awesome for support, and click that no. And then you go to the general tab and then disable default fonts, and you click that check that as well. And that will just prevent Elementor from loading the Font Awesome file and all the icon files as well. If you're not using them, there's no point in loading them in. That being said, if you're changing things like these settings, what you should do is go into the Elementor tools after you've saved those and then click on Regenerate CSS to make sure that your CSS files are up to date with the proper stuff. Otherwise, you're not going to see the benefits and changes. So talking about font files, if you've disabled Font Awesome and everything else, you probably should be loading font files locally. You get performance benefits if you load them locally anyway. And there was a test case last year, I think, in the EU, where someone was downloading a Google font, I think, and that broke the GDPR privacy rules, and somebody got fined along the line for that. So if you've got any clients that are in Europe, then you definitely want to disable all fonts and load whatever ones you need locally. And so here's a step to do this. You want to go to Google Fonts or whatever your font supply is, download the zip file. That's probably going to give you a TIFF, which is a TTF file. These are quite large to load in. That's what you load into your Windows. I don't know about Mac, probably Mac too. But those TFF files are quite large. You don't really want to be loading them on the web, so you want to convert them to what's called a WOFF2, WOFF2. So what you want to do is step 2 is go to Convertio or Cloud Convert, load up your TTF, and then download the WOFF2. Then you navigate to Elementor and then Custom Fonts and create a new font name, upload your WOFF2 file, and then publish it. So pretty easy for that, and then you'll be able to reference that within Elementor. Going along with this, number 6 is preload fonts. So there's several ways to preload fonts. One of them is using plugins. There's lots of plugins that will allow you to preload fonts on WordPress. Or you could use a code snippet as well, or you could embed them even locally in the CSS file using an app font face. There is a good caching plugin. WP Rocket is a great cache plugin for WordPress. They've got a really good blog and they cover lots of performance, obviously, because it's a caching plugin. There's a blog that I've got on the screen. I'll load in all the links later, and you'll be able to get these slides. So you'll be able to find all these links. But it basically shows you how to preload fonts and how to use GT metrics to ensure that they are actually where they're meant to be. So what we mean by preloading is you're basically telling the web browser that you want to load those fonts first. So it grabs them first before it starts rendering the rest of the screen. And because what we don't want is WordPress to start rendering the header and then loading in some font files and it's stopping, the page being loaded in. So that's what we don't want. Number 7 is header and footer in HTML and CSS. Now, considering your header and footer is rendered on every single page, maybe except for a landing page, you should at least consider creating these as HTML files and link them into your header.php and your footer.php in your theme files. Now, HTML files are very flat, they're very fast, they don't need processed, and they can just be cached quickly and sent out by the web server. Style these with CSS, and then you preload those in your header the same as you do as the font. Now, yes, Elementor makes it very easy to create site-wide headers and footers. So, if you're not a coder, you're not a developer, it's easy to jump to Elementor to do that. But it also adds a whole lot of additional code and styles and widgets and things that, maybe a header or a footer just doesn't need. Most footers are just plain copyright thing with maybe a list of links to go elsewhere. You don't really need to code that in Elementor, do containers and intersections and stuff. So it's worthwhile considering if you want that little bit of speed boost to consider doing your headers and footers in HTML instead of Elementor. Number 8 is delay your JavaScript files. So Elementor, any kind of themes and plugins that they deal with lots of asset files. Assets are things like images, CSS files, and JavaScript files. A good performance tip is to try and delay those because they can be quite large sometimes. So Perf Matters is a paid plugin that does lots of WordPress performance optimization features, specifically the ability to delay or what we call defer JavaScript towards the end of the page. And WP Rocket has this too. So if you go to the link here, it's Perf Matters and docs, it basically tells you what to do. It's got a little list of all the Elementor JavaScript files that you can then add into the exclusion list to defer or delay until the web page renders. You're going to have to test it with your site. Things like animations might require you to load in the JavaScript file a little bit earlier than the end of the website, but it's worthwhile. Most of your web pages won't have a problem if you shove all the JavaScript files down the bottom. But again, you need to experiment a little bit with that. So if you are deferring everything to the end of the page and you do see things that are not working, and maybe field validation or buttons are not being rendered properly or things like that, then you might just want to have a look at which file that is and maybe take it out of the exclusion and test again. So a lot of these performance metrics are very much testing. Implement it, test it. Does it break your site? Oops, okay, remove that and try again. Number 9 is to use containers. So if you're not familiar with containers were released they've been in beta, alpha and beta for a long time, but they've just became release candidate of the last couple of versions of Elementor. It's called Flexbox and grid containers. So these are the new way of creating layouts in Elementor. So rather than use sections and intersections and columns, we just now use containers. And it uses Flex to move all the items in the container around. So you should be using containers now. I think it will be in the next version of Elementor going forward, as in the default way, so sections will be gone. To enable those, so there are experiments in this 3.15. So to enable this, you want to go into your settings again, Elementor settings, and then ongoing experiments, and make sure you've got Flexbox container and grid container both active and saved, and then go and regenerate your CSS again just to make sure everything's working okay. The idea behind containers is it's just less code that's going out to the browser. So if you have a look at your HTML when you're doing sections and intersections and columns, you'll see there's lots of divs and stuff in those. When you do move to containers, then you'll see a lot less of that. And less stuff to load means, it's going to be speedier, it's going to be faster. What you do want to do is beware of the automatic conversion. So if you've got those features enabled, if you then go into a page that's got sections and intersections, an old way of doing it, Elementor will most likely pop up and say, hey, do you want me to auto-convert this to containers? And while that's great, what you do want to do is have a look at what it's done afterwards. So you do want to use the navigator pane on the right-hand side, and then just have a look at what it's done when it's converted all these things. What you'll tend to find, if you've got an old section within an intersection and some columns, it just basically converts each of those elements to container. Okay, so your top level section will be a container, but your intersection will now be a container. And then if you've got columns, it'll probably be a container around it. So it's like 3 levels of container now, where you only need 1. So if you are doing auto conversion, you want to go into the navigator pane and you want to just move your stuff around, get rid of those redundant containers that's converted automatically. And that's going to speed up your page as well. Number 11, this is the last one for the Elementor performance specifically, and it's keep your layouts clean, flat, and optimized. So try not to nest containers within containers within containers. You shouldn't need to do that anymore because you've got flex control, which means that you can position all your items within your container pretty much anywhere you want, whereas before you might have to use a section with an intersection to get, everything in the middle and align it, in the middle. With flex, it's just a few controls and all your items are bang in the middle or wherever you want them. So you shouldn't need to nest containers within containers. So try not to do that. Try and have a flat structure. For example, maybe have a container and then your H1 title, and then another container underneath with your next content, and then another container with your next content, rather than bung everything in the one big container and try and move all around within that. So flatter layouts, they're going to render faster in the browser. Also review how many and the usage of your Elementor widgets that you're using on that page, especially those with animations. We're talking about carousels and things that move and all that sort of stuff. If you're, the more that a widget does something interactively, the more that it has to be supported with JavaScript files, CSS files, which means the more it's loading in. So, while it's nice to have a scrolling carousel on your front page of all your clients' logos that kind of, scrolls along, do you really need that? Test performance against static, properly resized images. the same images get the same concept is getting across, but you might find you'll maybe gain a second performance for that. So just have a think about your usage of widgets on your pages as well. Okay, that was the Elementor specific performance test. Let me just shout down to my kid who's looking to get food. Hold on, actually, I'll just put myself on mute. Okay, that should do. Okay, WordPress performance. Let's get into it. So number 12. So this is general WordPress. So we're putting our Elementor aside, general WordPress, and some of these tips are just general for any website. So, Renee, if you're doing Wix, some of these will be relevant to that as well. But for WordPress, the first thing you should check is the built-in site health tool. So that's in WordPress tools. See if any issues are highlighted and try and correct them there first. So it's very good at picking up things like, your PHP version's out of date. There's a critical issue there. Your site is set to display errors so that the debug log is on, which is not good. And just go through any recommendations there. And that's going to give you a good starter for 10 for cleaning up your WordPress website in general. Hold on a second. 8-year-olds. Right. Number 13 is image optimization. Now, I've got a few here for images because probably out of everything that you can do with WordPress, image optimization, at least this is what I find with client websites, it's usually the one that gives you the best overall speed performance. Because people will take stuff in their iPhone and load them up at 5,000 by 4,000 images, and then they're displaying the little thumbs on their blog, So image optimization is a big thing. So the larger images that you have, the longer it's going to take to download them from the server, and the slower your page is going to be to render. So make sure that you're using the biggest pixel size needed for your particular theme. And you should be able to get that from the documentation of your theme. So if you're, for example, the biggest image is when you're looking at your blog post, and it's a featured image for that at the top of the blog post, have a look at what size that is. Is it 800 across? Is it 1920 across? That's the biggest size image, then you shouldn't be creating anything larger than that, because there's no need to do that. So make sure you got the sizes correct for your theme, and that will help a lot for page speed. If you want to optimize for retinas, so for the iMac stuff, for the iPads and iMac Pros, then there's a good plugin to use. It's called WP Retina 2X. And this allows you to specify a correct 2x image for these Retina devices. So rather than have, just 2x for everything, then it intelligently knows it's a Mac, it's a Retina screen to serve that particular image out. So you can optimize that image and optimize the other images for, just normal desktop devices. So that's the plugin that I use. There's probably other ones, but I've used this one very successfully on client sites before. Number 13, again, image optimization still. There's another couple of slides for this one. So thumbnails, make sure that the image sizes are correct in settings and media. As a tip here, so WordPress automatically generates 3 types of thumbnails. So thumbnail, which is 150 by 150, then 300 square, and then 1024 square. So automatically generates all those. As a tip, if you don't need any of those particular image sizes, if you add a 0 into those, then WordPress will not create those image files. So if you don't need medium size, you don't need those thumbnail sizes, just put 0000, save that, then WordPress will not generate those files. So that can save you a little bit of time and disk space as well. So don't muck around with image upload plugins. So you shouldn't have things like Smush It on your WordPress website. You want to be doing all your image conversions optimization on your local PC or Mac before you upload them into WordPress. Your server will thank you for that. There's plenty of native PC and Mac apps that run and they can optimize single images, or can optimize a whole directory of images in batch mode. These are a couple that I use. So on the PC is File Optimizer with an S, which is nice to see. And on the Mac, it's called Image Optim for those. So there's just a couple of applications that you can sit on your desktop PC and then resize it for the proper size, and then load it up to WordPress. Don't let WordPress do all the automatic resizing and stuff. That's just a waste of server resources. So if you've got a lot of media, what you can do is you can zip up your wp-content/uploads using the file manager on cPanel or Plesk. Download that to your local machine, unzip it, and run one of these plugins on that entire folder. You can do things like for JPEGs, they might be set for 100%. You can set it to maybe 80% or 75%. Run it across all your JPEGs. It'll squeeze them down. You won't see any difference. The human eye won't see any difference like that. But you might be saving 10, 100K on each image, and then just zip them back up, upload them back, and then unzip them on the web server. There's a very, very straightforward way of kind of squeezing down, compressing images for a huge benefit. Here's some file types, just so you're aware of the different types of files. So PNG is lossless, and it's got it also supports transparent background. So you need a transparent background, you should be using PNG. But it's a format's called lossless, which means that a bit represents a bit. So these files tend to be larger. JPEG supports 10:1 compression. So if you're in image software, then you'll see that if you save something as JPEG, you can save it as, you know, high res, high, medium, low, all that sort of stuff. Play around with different settings. I guarantee that if you go down to high or even medium for most images, your eye won't see any pixelization or difference, and you could be dropping 500K, you know, for those. So JPEG's really, really good. WebP is a later compression than JPEG. JPEG is quite old. WebP is lossless again. It's compression transparency, so it supports both PNG and JPEG. But in general, not all the time, but in general, you get about a 1/3 smaller file size in PNG or JPEG. In general, not all. Sometimes if I save a JPEG, for a JPEG as a WebP, sometimes it can be bigger. It just depends what's within the image and how the compression works. But in general, you can save 1/3 file size just using WebP alone. Yep, so this is another one. This is PC and Mac and Linux. So this is called XNConvert, and it converts JPEGs and PNGs or anything else just to WebP. I think it does other things, but this is the one that I use to convert all my JPEGs to WebP, if you want to do that as a batch style. Now, as a side note, I've not got a slide for this, and it's rather complicated. If you've already got JPEGs and you will convert them all to WebPs, I've got a blog or a specific, I don't know, video about that. There's quite a lot of steps to do it. It can be done, but it's a little bit of a lengthy process. So if anyone's interested, you can ask me that on Meetup or in Slack or the Facebook group, and I'll see if I can hunt that out for you. Okay, number 14, other types of media. So we're talking about audio and video and PDF files and stuff. Try and offload as much of that as you can from your website. Try not to upload that into your WP content, into your media library. It shouldn't really be sitting there. So whether it's using a CDN for your images or services such as Amazon S3 or Backblaze B2 for PDFs. For audios, there's SoundCloud and Libsyn, which support podcast stuff. For video, there's Vimeo, there's Adillo. There is YouTube, but you know, YouTube throws up adverts and stuff, so we tend to not use that for displaying videos on websites. But yeah, definitely those types of other media files, get them off WordPress. They shouldn't be on WordPress, it should be on like a dedicated system. Adillo is very good. I got a lifetime deal to that. I think they're just doing a lifetime deal at the moment, and it's unlimited storage. It's basically like Vimeo. You can lock all your content, you know, you can play around with the IP address, security, you've got stats and stuff. It's a lifetime service, unlimited storage. That's what I use for that. So a good little tip there. Number 15, I'm aware of time, so I might try and speed up a little bit. Number 15 is offload email. So I still find that many WordPress websites are sending out regular newsletters or other subscription emails. It's just using the WordPress mailer. Don't do that. Sending out emails is a very, very costly server resource, especially if your email list is super large. It can also get your web server IP address blacklisted if a lot of people are clicking on spam or things like that. So it's just altogether not a good thing to do. For emails, you should be using an email service like SendGrid or Mailgun or Amazon SES. There's plenty out there. Those are probably the top ones up there. And you can use a plugin called wpmailsmtp.com, which then you can put the credentials, the API keys for SendGrid or Mailgun or SES into that. It bypasses the WordPress PHP emailer and it just sends it straight to that service, and that service will then start all emailing and it'll handle all the stuff properly. So yeah, definitely get that off your WordPress website. If you want to run emails through your Gmail, you can use that little plugin as well. So you don't have to run SendGrid or Mailgun. If you've got like a Google Workspace, then there is an option to just run it through your Gmail account for there as well. But I use Amazon SES. I've got about a 2,000 subscriber list, and it costs me, I think, 18 cents a month to run it through there. So, it's pretty cheap. Number 15 is caching. You should install a caching plugin software on your WordPress website. It gives you more control over what is cached and what is not, rather than relying on what the host does. There's several good ones. The older ones are W3 Total Cache, and there's WP Super Cache. They're still good, but the one that's miles ahead is WP Rocket, which is paid. The other two are free, but WP Rocket is a paid version. Now, caching plugins, they store a copy of your rendered pages as static HTML. So WordPress is built on PHP. So when WordPress is rendering a page, it's running it through PHP, and PHP is converting it to HTML, and then it serves out to the browser. Caching plugins do that in advance, and they store the HTML file and then just serve that straight out. So it's a very quick way to serve that to your visitors' browsers, rather than WordPress having to do all the heavy lifting. Now, caching plugins, they can dramatically increase the speed of your website. Just remember to exclude any dynamic pages, things like carts, checkouts, accounts, and profile pages. Those are things that probably can't be cached because the data might change, might update. So if someone buys a product and they want to go into their dashboard and see that product there, the product details there, then if they're caching that, that's probably not going to work. So definitely pay attention to your caching plugins and set them up properly according to how your website operates. Number 16 is reduce CSS and JavaScript files. Themes and plugins tend to bring a lot of CSS and JavaScript files with them. As I said before, the larger the file size, the slower the page is going to take to render. There's a good plugin called Autoptimize. I can never pronounce it. It's down there. And basically, it's got a lot of options that allows you to minify CSS and JavaScript files. What that means is when we write CSS and JavaScript files, I'm talking about developers, we like to put spaces and indents and comments to let other people know what we're doing. That just increases the file size. And the server, the WordPress, doesn't care about that. So minification squeezes down. It removes comments, it removes spaces. If you look at a minified CSS file, it's just kind of one long, big, huge, long paragraph of jumbled stuff. It's not readable, but it is to the machines and it's faster. So give that a go. Number 17 is pings and trackbacks. Yes, they still exist. Does anyone ever care about ping backs and trackbacks for single post nowadays? I don't know. I don't think anyone uses that. It was big back in the day when blogs first started, but you should just disable them. So go into settings and discussion, uncheck everything there, and then WordPress isn't even attempting to do anything extra for those. Number 18 is WordPress themes and features of the themes. Now, the functions that are built into your theme can have an impact on the speed. Themes offer hundreds of features, tend to load in loads of CSS and JavaScript files just in case one feature might want to get used. So things like Google Fonts, that's a very popular thing, or Font Awesome. All this is going to slow down the render of your web pages, especially if you're not using half the stuff in there. The best themes are those that have been custom built for your website. But if you're not a developer, that might not be an option to you. So if you are running Elementor, consider using something lightweight like the Hello theme as a starting point, and then you're basically just adding plugins that support extra stuff that you need, rather than look at like a big heavyweight theme. I think Avada comes to mind, that's got carousels and testimonials and all this stuff built into it. That, you know, it's loading all these files, and you might only need to use one of those things. So these are 4 reasonably lightweight themes. So Hello, specifically for Elementor. I run Generate Press on most of my client websites. That's part of my stack. Ocean WP is pretty good, and then Astra is reasonable as well. Although it's probably the most heaviest of these ones here. So yeah, pay careful attention to what themes you're using and the features that they have. If you're not using it, dump that and find a better lightweight theme. Okay, number 19 is review your plugins, replace or trash I've got. So at the bottom, I've got the number of plugins does not equal a slow website. I've got lots of plugins on my WordPress website, but a lot of them are back-end stuff, and that doesn't affect your front-end speed at all. So just because, you know, a client's running 100 plugins is probably too much, let's face it. But, you know, if they're running 20, 30 plugins, it doesn't mean that the website's slow because of that. Plugins do different things. I mean, look at Elementor. Elementor is a big plugin, but it, you know, and it does a lot to your website. But then you've maybe got a small plugin that only adds or removes a particular thing from the admin bar. That's no significance. So you cannot correlate the number of plugins to how slow a website is. What you should be doing is looking at the quality and their functionality. So what do they do within that? So are you just using one function of a particular plugin that offers hundreds of other stuff, Jetpack, you know, then, you know, you want to be looking, do you really need that one plugin that's got all these options, or can you just remove that and get one plugin that just does that one option? Yes, you should. So that's basically go through all your plugins and see if you are still using them. If they're too heavyweight, replace them and trash them for something a little bit more lightweight. If you're wondering how you figure out what is heavyweight, there is a good plugin called Query Monitor. So the link's there. What this does is it puts up a little admin bar. So you run your WordPress website while you're logged in, and then you bring up this little drop-down menu, and it shows you what's happening. So what WordPress is doing. WordPress mainly stores content in the database. So you'll see in this lots of database queries to pull this, and lots of files that pulls in to do that. Query Monitor can be a good way to figure out where the bottlenecks are in your plugins or your theme. So you'll usually see like a file space that'll tell you which plugin it's running or which theme it's saying. If you're starting to see seconds, you know, if you've got a particular page that's got a problem, run it through Query Monitor, you'll usually see whereabouts that particular problem is happening. So it could be a particular plugin that's running through it, could be a particular function from the theme. So, you know, if you're not sure as to why a page is slow, try and use Query Monitor. It might just kind of edge you in the right direction. Query Monitor is free. This is New Relic. New Relic is not free. Sometimes if you're on a premium hosting plan, I'm thinking of Kinsta and WP Engine, sometimes they will have a New Relic option. New Relic is a server monitoring tool. So whereas Query Monitor is just WordPress, it's a WordPress plugin, it just looks at WordPress. New Relic expands that to the entire server itself. So it can be really good to diagnose why websites are running really slow. So you might have done your 3 baseline tests. They might have come back with a great TTFB, so your hosting's fine, but something in there is not quite right. You've had a look at your theme, you've had a look at your plugins, you're just not sure. New Relic is a tool which kind of spans the entire server. So it goes all the way down to PHP threads, for example, how many there are, what's running, what particular function is it running. It has a look at the database, what queries is database running, how's the database caching stuff. So again, it might be a little bit above your head, but it's a really good diagnostic tool to figure out exactly what's going on with the web server. This is the one that I ran. I had a particular client with the email newsletter list on the server. I had like 5,000 people on the list. It basically was only getting, I don't know, not even a third of the way through before the next day it was trying to do it. So we used New Relic and found exactly, it was just completely clogging up all the PHP worker threads. So that was a good tool. Stefan's saying, is there a free tier? There's not. This is a paid version, and it's also got a WordPress specific plugin that is an add-on, so you need to pay for that. As I say, some of the kind of higher tier WP Engine or Kinsta, they've usually got New Relic as an option from their control panel that you can boot up and analyze, but in general, it's a paid service. I thought I was finished. Nope. Okay, I'm going to keep going. There's only a few more left. So number 22 is delete transients. I think there's 29. So there you go. We'll keep going. Transients are little data caches. They're stored in the database in the WP options table. They should clear themselves up, but sometimes they often don't. And sometimes they can take up huge amounts of your database. I'm thinking WooCommerce. So you can use a plugin called Transient Manager. Load it in, find out the settings in the admin dashboard, and then just delete transients. Transients are safe to delete because when you're creating a transient, you're actually getting the data in. You see if the transient exists first. If it doesn't, then you do the query and then save it to the database. So that's it. So you can delete them because they'll just recreate themselves. What you should do is after you've deleted all your transients, then just delete that Transient Manager plugin. And that's the same for Query Monitor. Query Monitor is very heavy resource-wise, so it should only be used as a diagnostic tool. Same as New Relic as well, because it puts stress on the server. So use these, diagnose the problem, and remove them as well, because you don't need them on your website all the time. Similarly, you should be deleting revisions. By default, WordPress out of the box is an unlimited number of post revisions. So if you're going in and you're updating your page and you're changing this, moving this around, you've got a blog post, you're editing it and you're changing it, then you've probably got 50 revisions in your database. Times that over 5 years and you've got a lot of database space. So nobody needs that. I don't think you need unlimited revisions for those. And it takes up a humongous amount of database space. So a good plugin is WP-sweep, and it will show you all the different types of post revisions. So you get post revisions to all posts, so pages, posts, custom post types, all that sort of thing. You can remove all those. There's another little setting that you can put. You can actually limit the number of revisions that the WordPress does. So in the file, this is the wp-config.php file. It's the most important WordPress file. It's the configuration settings file. You can add one of these lines. So wp_post_revisions, you can maybe set it to 3. So if you still want to have some backup there, you can set it to 3 or 10 or whatever you want it to be. Or if you don't want any at all, but you're kind of getting that dangerous route where, if you say nothing at all, and I guarantee if you set that to false, no, then the next post you do, you'll want to go back one, even though you've not used it in like 2 years. So I have mine set at 3. But you can set it with no revisions at all. And that's going to help with your database bloat to kind of keep it down. Number 25 is choose a high performance web host. So you're never going to get great website performance with a traditional shared hosting. So if you're paying $3 a month for your web hosting, then you're going to get a $3 per month service for that, for most situations. Do-it-yourself VIP, so VPS, so virtual private servers, they can be really speedy and performant if you've got the time and skill to support and manage the server. So you might not have that skill set. DIY cloud hosting will probably get you the fastest speed and performance, but again, you've got to have the time and skills to manage that particular setup. Once you go manage VPS, once you go manage cloud support, then that's an extra cost that the web hosting company is going to manage that for you, but an extra cost that you incur. So to get the best of both worlds, WordPress managed hosts, they're going to give you a good level of performance for your WordPress website and look after the whole server infrastructure that's fine-tuned for WordPress, and that's included in that kind of yearly cost. So you'll tend to find that WordPress managed hosts cost more than the shared hosts, and maybe a little bit more than your DIY VPS. But if you're not a developer, if you don't have the time to maintain it, then that amount that you pay extra per month, that could be valuable return of investment, as in your time given back to your business. So there's many out there. There's Wordify, that's the one that I use. There's WP Engine, there's Kinsta, there's Kinetics, there's Pagely, even traditional shared hosting companies like SiteGround. They offer a WP managed hosting service for those you pay a little bit extra for that. So have a look around and you'll chat to the tech support people in there, but it's worthwhile choosing a decent web host, obviously within your budget, and it's going to give you a really fast response, especially for that time to first buy. Saying that, where you have your website data stored is kind of important as well. So it takes time, not a lot of time, but it takes time for the server to communicate and send information to a client web browser. It's called latency. So it should be obvious that the further away your physical location is from your server, from the client's location, the longer it's going to take to transfer that data all the way to that client site. So for example, if you're building a website, your clients are just 99% in Australia, but you're hosting it with an American service in America, that doesn't make much sense. It might be a few milliseconds, but when you have hundreds of individual requests that are happening to render a single web page, that all adds up to seconds, and seconds are noticeable, as we saw from the very first slide. So if you have an option, and some of these bigger web hosts do, they allow you to choose what's called a data center. So try and choose one that's kind of closest to where your primary website target audience is. There's also something called premium DNS. Now, every domain name needs a DNS lookup to get that IP address of the physical server, but not all DNS servers are equal. Long story short, some water. Long story short, on October 21st, 2016, that's a long while ago, there was a massive distributed denial of service, DDoS attack, on a popular DNS provider called DYN, D-Y-N. As their name services started to fail, premium brands such as Twitter, PayPal, Amazon, CNN, BBC, Verizon, hundreds of others were left with no way for their customers to access their websites and services. And because of what happened, some companies decided to create a secondary failover DNS system as a backup. And ironically, these backup systems are now actually faster than the internet. So for example, Amazon, they have premium DNS service called Route 53. And amongst other premium DNS servers, it's super fast compared with the free single DNS that most providers run with. Now, there's other companies, there's Kinsta, there's EasyDNS, I think even GoDaddy has a premium DNS service, although you also have to pay for it as an add-on. But it's worthwhile considering just to get that little bit of extra edge if you can afford it, if you want to go all out on performance. Okay, second last one, I think, CDN, so Content Delivery Network. CDNs are fantastic with speeding up any website. A CDN caches a copy of the already visited website from your website, similar to the way that WP Rocket does locally. But in this case, it stores that particular cached file in different servers around the globe. So you're really balancing the traffic, on a global level here. So because it reduces the latency time between server and client. So even if your target audience is in Australia and you've got your website hosted in the US, if you're using something like Cloudflare CDN or Bunny or Max CDN, then the people in Australia will only go to the nearest server that they have closest to them. So if they've got one in Sydney, it'll just grab it from Sydney. If they've got one in New Zealand, it'll just grab it from New Zealand, rather than go all the way back to the US and back to Australia again. So it reduces latency and therefore increasing the apparent speed of the website. So of course, CDNs are not perfect. There's certain areas of site that can't be cached. Again, things like shopping carts, checkouts, gated content for membership sites, things like that. But Cloudflare is probably one of the most popular CDN versions. It offers a free version, which is very, very good, and also a premium version. The premium version comes with your premium DNS and other tools. Cloudflare is usually integrated into cPanel and Plesk, which is popular because it means it's like a one-click or two-click setup. So if you don't know how to set up, you can just follow the setup wizard in cPanel. And with Cloudflare, you also get the additional benefit of their lightning fast premium DNS. It's on their free plan. So I've got here even on their free plan for that. So that's a good thing to do. I use Wordify as my web host, and they run Bunny CDN, and it's been super fast for me. I've had a few issues with that, but they've resolved it really, really quickly. I think the last one was JSON files, so Lottie files. For whatever reason, it was rendering them back as HTTP around HTTPS, but that's been fixed now. But yeah, so any CDN is a worthwhile addition to your performance toolkit. Last one, I promise. I'm starting to lose my voice now as well. Last tip, ultimate speed, and Steph will like this one, is headless and static WordPress. In the WordPress meetup that we had on Monday, we actually had the guys from WP Engine talk about about headless WordPress. They have their own tool called Atlas, But for specifically, this is an Elementor talk. Elementor recently, maybe not so recently, acquired a company called Stratic. Stratic allows you to host your WordPress website. And what they do is they, similar to CDN, similar to a cache, they pre-render your PHP files into an HTML file. So they just basically serve that, which is ultra quickly. So you have a system where you log in, it's WordPress as normal, you update your stuff. Whenever you publish something, then Stratic takes over and it squashes that in HTML file that then the website can check out really, really quickly. So that's something to consider. Headless WordPress, it takes a little bit of extra admin, extra layers, extra thing. But if you really want to scale your website, if you really want to get that super performance, then headless WordPress with a static output at the end is probably where you want to ultimately end up. Also, the second benefit is it's super secure because you can't hack HTML files. There's no login for that. So you've just got your protected WordPress website. You could bind that to an IP address or a dynamic range of IP addresses, so the hackers just can't even get in. All they can see is that static HTML that's logged in. Okay, that's it. Wow. So that was 28 tips to speed up Elementor and WordPress. Happy to do any Q&As. What I'll do is I'll get rid of the screen share and I'll go through the chat to see if there's anything in there and see if I can help. Otherwise, if anyone wants to chip in with a question, then yeah, just go for it.
Yeah, thanks. That was a great presentation. All the sort of points I was going to raise, you covered. So,
yes.
Yeah. I was just going to add with very keen to hear what you said about the hosting. A lot of the free, or not the free, the cheaper hosting in Australia, even though it might be an Australian company, their servers are actually based in Asia or America. So Singapore seems to be very popular, for example. So even though it's an Australian company, you might be coming from hosting from Singapore, and that's going to add 30 milliseconds or 300 milliseconds to your latency there, right there and then. So yeah, you want to watch that.
Yeah. I'll always ask, where's the data center? Where's my stuff being stored? And again, that's also relevant if you're dealing with European clients as well. Under the GDPR rule, you need to know where that data is being stored, because if you're developing a website, hosting it for a client, and suddenly they're starting to get legal letters through, that's a bad thing. Okay, I'm looking through. Let's see. In our course, we're recommended to look at green hosting. I would like to switch to green host. Thoughts and opinions. Green hosts. So are you talking about hosts that offset their carbon footprint?
Yes, and also obviously located in Australia to reduce the carbon footprint, so it's not going to the US or wherever GoDaddy servers are. I was just curious what your thoughts and opinions on picking a green host is. Are you going to be, what's the word? Is there something that you're going to be, what's the word? Not compensating. Are they going to be just as good as any other host? That's the question.
Yeah. To be honest, I'm unsure. It's something I've been thinking about. I should investigate that more, I think. I'm not sure how they offset the carbon. I'm not sure how to implement the carbon offset. It's a big deal here in Australia, political wise, about companies being able to sell carbon credits and stuff and still pump out horrible fumes into the atmosphere. So I'm not sure how these hosting companies implement this kind of carbon offset. So they've got big data centers, they're running huge racks of servers, they're using huge amount of electricity, which is not good for the environment. So yeah, it's a good question. I'm not sure exactly what their policy of green is meant to be. I'm not aware of any particular standards, worldwide or Australian standards, that cover particularly hosting in the same way as companies can offset their carbon credits, the big oil and gas companies. So it would be worthwhile digging into that, I think, and I think that'd make a really good topic for a webinar. Well, that. So yeah.
Can I just jump in, Will? Sorry.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, I'm not sure how this goes down to the actual hosting companies, because this is probably several layers back up. But in my previous work, I was quite involved with data center with NextDC, which is just down here in Port Melbourne. And we got the big tour in the Spreel and all the rest of it. And, you know, their roof's covered in solar panels. They've got all this efficiency stuff. They're very, very conscious of, you know, their footprint. But of course, they're like 3 layers above the sort of companies we're dealing with, because, you know, they're selling part of their racks to Microsoft for Azure and to Amazon. You know, they're hosting all of these people, and then a lot of these companies are then using Azure or AWS to actually do their hosting. So that's not visible to us either. So yeah, it's opaque, I think is the word.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. There's lots. It's a multifaceted subject, but yeah, great topic for bringing up, Rennie.
So I guess you just have to do a little bit of digging and just find out a little bit more about what makes them green. If they say they're green, what is it that actually makes them green?
Yeah. But you know,
Thanks.
on the ethical side, I think it's a good thing to look into. I mean, we try here to reduce our carbon footprint as much as possible. We didn't have a car until my boys started school. We've got solar panels up there. We recycle water, all that sort of stuff. So yeah, why not web hosting as well? Okay, let's have a look through, see if there's anything else. Paul says he uses WP CLI to clean up the trash and transients. Yep. So WP CLI, it's like a little script language that runs on the server. So if you're like a dev guy, it's a lot quicker to do that.
Happy to share that if anyone wants it.
Cool. I can't see anything particular. Paul's saying that he's using short pixel for image optimization. Yep, that can work as well. So short pixel is the way that I described it, it's kind of a free but long way of downloading all your images, optimized on your main machine, and then pushing it back up. Short pixel does that on the server. So, you know, it's something you don't want to run all the time, but you buy credits for images and then you run it and it just sits slowly in the background, looks at your JPEGs and squashes them down and stuff like that.
It is a paid service, but it runs on their server, not yours.
And it puts it back, yeah.
So, yeah.
Rennie, you got another question?
Yeah, I did post it in the chat. I mean, it's again, please remember that I'm pretty green here.
Yeah.
I know I was surprised to learn that custom fonts actually take up more space than the inbuilt fonts in Wix, for instance. So my question to you is, on the website that I've currently built and intending to publish at some point is a website for my partner's recruitment business. We do have a testimonials strip, which includes the custom font that I uploaded because they didn't have the font that I wanted. My question is, because you were talking about carousels with PNGs for customer logos, for instance, and he wants, at the moment, I just have a static, just the logos just as images. He was interested in exploring having a carousel with the client logos running across. So my curiosity is, in terms of taking up space or bandwidth, or what it be, in terms of having a carousel of client logos, being that they're PNG files, is that going to take up more space, reduce the website speed, or like how does that work? Or just a little bit of insight, please.
Yeah, so in general, whenever you add something that moves, it's got extra functionality. So it's going to be more assets that you load in, like your JavaScript, for example, to make it move stuff. So particularly for carousels, if you're doing images in carousels, you probably want to use WebP rather than PNG, because PNGs they'll be the largest file format. So if you've got multiple files there, just try and save them down as WebP and play around with the compression ratio. So maybe go down to 75%, and see, do you start to see pixelation or not? Then maybe kind of go down one. So you can really reduce that file size by those. And if you're using the files, then you'll like WebP, they can be cached as well, which can make it like super fast. I guess my point was, if a client wants something, you can advise them, but at the end of the day, they take the hit on that. So if your client is looking for 800 by 600 PNG carousel images and they've got like 40 of them for whatever reason on the homepage, you say to them, well, that's crazy. It's going to slow down your website by a lot. Would you consider doing this? And they say no. And then you build it and they say, oh, our website's all slow. You go, well, that. Yeah. So it's just looking at the functionality. If you've just got that one carousel on the page with just a few testimonials, with a few images, it's probably not going to slow down your website as much. And if that's a functionality that you need, then you take the hit on that. You can make a page super fast by using system fonts, not doing any layouts, not having anything moving, but it's probably going to look a bit sucky. But you'll get 100% on the speed, which is yeah. So there's a bit of a balance that you have to do between optimizing your website to get really fast results and what you actually need it to do, and also your ability as well. So if you're a developer, you can hard code stuff up, that's really lean and mean. But if you're not a developer, then you need to be using a plugin or a page builder, to drag that stuff across. So while we've been talking about specific optimization, you've got to bear in mind that what's your skill set, what are you able to do versus what sort of feature set do you want out. So it's all about balance for that. I know people who go all out to try and get 100% on the Google scores, green across the board. But then at the same time, they're whining that, the carousel doesn't work or they can't implement this. I'm like, well, just take the hit. It is what it is. Yeah. So my advice would be to kind of, optimize as much as you can. If you've got a testimonial carousel, you probably don't also want a logo carousel on the same page. Try and be a little bit sensible. You don't want multiple components of the same thing, everything moving, because that is really going to add extra weight to the page.
Yeah.
Does that help?
Thank you. Yes, thank you. Appreciate it.
Cool. Okay, I'll take 2 more questions if anyone has it, and then we'll call it like, because it is 7:30. Just looking through.
Not the WP to static plugin, Will. I'm not sure if you tried it on Elementor. I tried it last year, but it was a different format. You had to use PHP. I think now it's different. For example, it was a zip file or something, or before you had to uncompress it and it wouldn't work. But in its and kind of installed state as a plugin.
That's a static. It's WP to static, but I think it's Stratic, the one that I was.
Oh yeah, that's the more kind of SaaS service.
It is. It's a service. Yeah. So you load your backend website into Stratic, and then their services in real time squash it down to HTML on the backend. Yeah. Okay. If no one else has got any questions, I think I've just about ran my voice into the ground tonight. That was a long one. So thank you very much for bearing with me. Hopefully got some tips out of that. Next month, as John said, we're talking about the mega menu. So we're doing the mega menu for that. And I don't know if we've got any more planned after that. We're probably looking at the new features that are coming out in 3.15 after that, because Elementor's changed quite a bit. And if you are upgrading to Elementor 3.15, then if you're a developer, beware, because there's quite a few changes in the back end. So you probably want to have a look at the developer log for that as well before you go upgrading. So thank you very much, everyone. Thanks for your great questions. Thanks for persevering. And I'll see everyone next month.
Thanks, Will.
Thank you.
That was
Thanks for
great.
having me.
Thank you very much,
Bye.
mate.
Right.